A military is a heavily armed, highly organized force primarily intended for warfare, also known collectively as armed forces. It is typically officially authorized and maintained by a sovereign state, with its members identifiable by their distinct military uniform. It may consist of one or more military branches such as an army, navy, air force, space force, marines, or coast guard. You are watching Yocotox. We are showing you the powerful militaries in the world. Let's start with number 5. Japan. The Japan Self-Defense Forces, JSDF, also referred to as the Self-Defense Forces or Japanese Armed Forces, are the unified military forces of Japan that were established in 1954 and are controlled by the Ministry of Defense. The Prime Minister is the Commander-in-Chief of the Japan Self-Defense Forces. Military authority runs from the Prime Minister to the Cabinet-level Minister of Defense of the Japanese Ministry of Defense. Military cooperation has increased with Australia, India, Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore and the United States. Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution prohibits Japan from establishing a military or solving international conflicts through violence. When Japan's active and reserve components are combined, the country maintains a lower ratio of military personnel to its population than any member nation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Of the major Asian nations, only India, Indonesia, Malaysia and Thailand keep a lower ratio of personnel in arms. Since India and Indonesia have much larger populations, they have larger numbers of personnel. The Japan Self-Defense Forces Day celebrates the foundation of the Japan Self-Defense Forces. It is celebrated every year in Japan since 1966. Number 4. India. The Indian Armed Forces are the military forces of the Republic of India. It consists of 3 professional uniformed services: the Indian Army, Indian Navy, and Indian Air Force. Additionally, the Indian Armed Forces are supported by the Indian Coast Guard and paramilitary organizations and various inter-service commands and institutions, such as the Strategic Forces Command, the Andaman and Nicobar Command, and the Integrated Defense Staff. The President of India is the Supreme Commander of the Indian Armed Forces. The Indian Armed Forces are under the management of the Ministry of Defence of the Government of India. With strength of over 1.4 million active personnel, it is the world's second largest military force and has the world's largest volunteer army. It also has the third largest defense budget in the world. It is important to note that the Central Armed Police Forces, which are referred to as paramilitary forces based on colonial perspective, are not armed forces. As such, they are headed by civilian officers from the Indian Police Service and are under the control of the Ministry of Home Affairs, not the Ministry of Defence. These are central police organizations. India honors its armed forces and military personnel annually on Armed Forces Flag Day, 7 December. The Indian Armed Forces are steadily undergoing modernization with investments in areas such as futuristic soldier systems and missile defense systems. Number 3. China. The People's Liberation Army is the armed forces of the People's Republic of China and of its founding and ruling political party, the Communist Party of China. The PLA consists of 5 professional service branches: the Ground Force, Navy, Air Force, Rocket Force, and the Strategic Support Force. Units around the country are assigned to one of 5 theater commands by geographical location. The PLA is the world's largest military force and constitutes the second largest defense budget in the world. The PLA is one of the fastest modernizing militaries in the world and has been termed as a potential military superpower with significant regional power and rising global power projection capabilities. The PLA is under the command of the Central Military Commission of the CPC. It is legally obliged to follow the principle of civilian control of the military, although in practical terms this principle has been implemented in such a way as to ensure the PLA is under the absolute control of the Communist Party. Its commander-in-chief is the chairman of the Central Military Commission. Since 1949, China has used 9 different military strategies, which the PLA calls strategic guidelines. The most important came in 1956, 1980, and 1993. In times of national emergency, the People's Armed Police and the China Militia act as a reserve and support element for the People's Liberation Army ground force. Number 2. Russia. The armed forces of the Russian Federation, commonly known as the Russian Armed Forces, are the military forces of Russia, established after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. On 7 May 1992, Boris Yeltsin signed a presidential decree establishing the Russian Ministry of Defense and placing all Soviet armed forces troops on the territory of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic under Russian control. The commander-in-chief of the armed forces is the President of Russia. The Russian armed forces were formed in 1992. It is the most powerful military in Europe and is one of the world's largest military forces. Russia has the world's second most powerful military. The Russian military is divided into three services: the Russian Ground Forces, the Russian Navy, and the Russian Aerospace Forces. In addition, there are two independent arms of service: the Strategic Missile Troops and the Russian Airborne Troops. The Defense Ministry of the Russian Federation serves as the administrative body of the armed forces. Under Russian federal law, the armed forces, along with the Federal Security Service border troops, the National Guard, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Federal Protective Service, the Foreign Intelligence Service, and Emerkim's Civil Defense, form Russia's military services and are under direct control of the Security Council of Russia. Number 1. United States of America. The United States Armed Forces are the military forces of the United States of America. It consists of the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, and Coast Guard. The President of the United States is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and forms military policy with the Department of Defense and Department of Homeland Security, both federal executive departments, acting as the principal organs by which military policy is carried out. All 6 armed services are among the 8 uniformed services of the United States. The U.S. Armed Forces are one of the largest military forces in terms of personnel. It draws its personnel from a large pool of paid volunteers. Although conscription has been used in the past, it has not been used since 1973, but the selective service system retains the power to conscript males and requires that all male citizens and residents residing in the U.S. between the ages of 18 to 25 register with the service. The U.S. Armed Forces are considered the world's most powerful military. The U.S. Air Force is the world's largest air force, the U.S. Navy is the world's largest navy by tonnage, and the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Marine Corps combined are the world's second largest air arm. In terms of size, the U.S. Coast Guard is the world's 12th largest maritime force. So you got it. The powerful military forces in the world. Where are you from? Comment below and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in next video.